Today we're going to talk about why Americans feel poor despite the numbers. There is a growing disconnect in the United States between what people are told about the economy and what they experience in their daily lives. Official reports speak of growth, resilience, and recovery. Headlines cite GDP expansion, low unemployment, and record-setting markets. Yet millions of Americans, those metrics feel abstract at best and dishonest at worst. When citizens feel poorer while being told the economy is strong, the problem isn't perception, it's measurement. The modern economy is increasingly evaluated through the indicators that no longer reflect household reality. Gross domestic product measures aggregate activity, not individual well-being. It rises when spending increases, even that spending is driven by debt, inflation, or necessity rather than the prosperity. If families are forced to spend more simply to maintain the same standard of GDP grows, but quality of life does not. Growth on paper can coexist with decline at the kitchen table. Employment numbers tell a similar story. Low unemployment is often presented as proof of economic health, but fails to capture underemployment, multiple job holdings of stagnant wages. Millions of Americans are working yet falling behind. Labor participation looks healthy only to one ignores the reality that many workers are trading stability for flexibility, benefits for gig income, and long-term security for short-term survival. A job no longer guarantees economic footing and merely delays financial stress. Inflation has further distorted public trust. Official inflation metrics are averages, smoothing out sharp increases in essential goods like housing, food, energy, and insurance. But households do not consume the averages, they consume necessities. When rent rises faster than wages, when groceries cost more each week, when utilities spike unpredictably, people feel it immediately. Telling them inflation is cooling while bills remain elevated does not measure, it alienates. Debt has become the silent stabilizer of this economy. Consumer credit, student loans, auto financing, and mortgages increasingly substitute the wage growth. Access to credit cards is the illusion of prosperity, but it masks fragility. Households appear solvent until interest rates rise and incomes falters. The economy functions not because people are thriving, but because they are borrowing more. That is not resilience, it's leverage. Assets of inflation has deepened inequality while distorting economic confidence. Rising home values and stock portfolios disproportionately benefit those who already own the assets. For renters and young Americans, higher prices represent barriers, not the gains. A booming market means little to someone priced out of the housing or unable to save. When policymakers cite market performance as evidence of success, the individuality highlights how disconnected policy priorities have become for a lived experience. Government messaging often treats confidence as a policy tool. If people believe the economy is strong, they are expected to spend, invest, and behave opportunistically. But confidence cannot be manufactured indefinitely. It must be earned through tangible improvement. When optimism is prompted without addressing structural pressures, the result is not growth, it is skepticism. The structure of the modern economy increasingly rewards scale over labor. Productivity gains are absorbed by corporations rather than shared with workers technologically, which improves efficiency, but wages lag behind the output. The promise that innovation would lift all boats given the way reality to a reality where it lifts balance sheets far more than paychecks. The imbalance fuels resentment not toward markets themselves but towards the system that appears rigged. Housing illustrates the failure clearly. Home ownership, once a cornerstone of middle-class stability, has become unattainable for many. Supply constraints, regulatory barriers, and investment speculation have driven prices far beyond income growth. Housing policy is discussed endlessly. Yet little changes when shelter becomes a speculative asset rather than a social foundation. Economic anxiety becomes permanent. Public discourse often frames economic criticism as pessimism or ignorance. Citizens who express concern are told they misunderstood microeconomics. But people do not need advanced degrees to recognize strain. The understanding when saving disappears, when emergencies become crises, and when process feels out of reach. Dismissing those concerns does not correct them, it delegitimizes them. The disconnect with political consequences. Economic frustration does not always manifest as coherent policy demands. Often it surfaces as distrust, polarization, and vitality. When people feel unheard, they gravitate toward voices that acknowledge their experience, even if solutions are imperfect. Ignoring economic reality does not preserve stability, it undermines it. The solution is abandoning date, but recalibrating priorities. Policymakers must focus less on the headlines indicators and more on affordability. Wage growth relative to costs and economic mobility. Stability should be measured by resilience to shocks, not by quarterly reports. An economy that works only favorable conditions is not strong, it's fragile. Transparency matters as much as reform. Leaders must speak honestly about the trade offs, limits, and failures. Scapegoating the hardships erodes trust faster than acknowledging it. A credible economic narrative begins with truth and reassurance. The American economy is now not collapsing, but it is straining, and strain ignored becomes crisis. Growth that benefits only a segment of society cannot sustain democratic legitimacy. Prosperity must be felt to be believed. Until policy aligns with lived experience, Americans will continue to hear good news and feel bad outcomes. This is the Unfiltered Political Ends podcast, in another episode. Thanks for watching. The numbers may look strong, but the economies are not spreadsheets. They are people, and people are telling something is wrong. Thanks for watching once again, and we'll see you next time on the Political Ends podcast.